Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, disaster in Pakistan.
The impact of the flooding on the economy.
Has the aid response been hindered by the media and the politics? Iran, 1953, and the media coup that still has an impact on the media there today. WikiLeaks getting its papers in order to protect the site from the people who want to shut it down. And when the signal drops, the action stops in our web video of the week.
I can hear you.
It took a while, but the world has come to understand the almost biblical scale of the flood catastrophe that has beset Pakistan. What has failed to occur, at least so far, is a proportionate response in terms of humanitarian aid. Donations to the cause have failed to match previous disasters, such as January's earthquake in Haiti. Among the theories out there on why that is, the story is not getting as much coverage as it deserves, that the dominant media narrative on Pakistan, the allegations of semi-official support for the Taliban, have stopped people reaching for their wallets, or that it may have something to do with images and emotions. That shots of floods just fail to move people the way images of earthquakes, tsunamis, and famines do. Our starting point this week is the submerged northern end of the subcontinent, and the theories being offered as to why flood victims there are not getting the help that they need.
When the water comes thundering down, it washes away everything.
Media coverage is a lifeline when it comes to crisis situations.
There was no let-up to the widespread flooding in Pakistan today.
Pakistan is a difficult story for the Western media to cover.
Already, media is talking about its favorite topic of Islamic extremism.
Terrorists could try to take advantage of a catastrophe.
What an event of this kind needs is somebody to sort of really light up the response.
They have lost their homes.
It's not that the story hasn't been covered. It's that it hasn't got the coverage disasters like this usually warrant.
A powerful earthquake.
In the week after the earthquake in Haiti, 41% of news stories in the U.S. were on that subject. In the first 2 weeks of the Pakistan flood story, it never moved above the 3% figure. Even when taking into account how close Haiti is to the U.S. and how far Pakistan is, that's a huge disparity in airtime and ink, when one considers that twice as many people are now homeless in Pakistan than live in Haiti.
How much time is given for this coverage in the primetime news? When it was 1 million, maybe one news capsule. Has it actually changed when it has hit 20 million and one of the worst floods in living memory anywhere in the world?
It's the impact of the flooding on the economy.
You see, more than 20 million people are affected by this. For many, many generations to come, Pakistan is going to reel from the effects of this disaster. It is a huge story. It should have gained an equal amount of media response, but it hasn't got that.
I think there's actually been a lot more coverage of the Pakistan floods than maybe people realise.
Dirty flood water.
Even now, a couple of weeks on, it is still leading some of the British news bulletins. The problem is, and it's very difficult without sounding completely crass to say this, is that the death toll has been relatively low. That means it's harder to stay at the top of the media agenda.
There is some element of this sort of morbid fascination with death tolls. The number of dead we're hearing about from Pakistan are in the very, very low thousands, even if millions and millions of people have been affected. Where, say, with Haiti, the first reports came through at 500,000 dead. So immediately that focuses a global compassion in a way that long-term crop destruction, long-term poverty, and mass people displacement perhaps doesn't.
The massive floods which are raging.
Media coverage of disasters is vital to get the aid coming in. International aid organizations are reporting that individual donations to the flood relief effort are coming in at a tiny fraction of what they saw after the 2004 tsunami or the Haitian earthquake. Part of the problem is that news, particularly television, is picture-driven. And relatively speaking, in terms of coverage, floods have an image problem.
They're not as dramatic pictures. The human suffering is often concealed below the water. You don't have one place to go to as you do in an earthquake.
She managed to cling to life.
Where you can find the baby being rescued from the rubble.
Her name is Michelle.
Clearly, there are images which are more powerful than others. The images that we saw from Haiti, they were spectacular images. The devastation caused by flooding is over a far, far longer period of time, but they don't have that immediate shock impact than, let's say, something like the tsunami did.
The other issue related to floods, unlike earthquake, is that often the saga of suffering continues for a very long time. For example, flood accumulated water leading to waterborne diseases. And unfortunately, media is not there most of the time to cover this.
There is a hierarchy of disasters. At the very top, you get things like tsunamis or earthquakes, disasters that bring us iconic images, something that is happening that is dramatic. Then lower down than that, you get floods.
Many are starving.
Also colluding against this story is the dominant media narrative, such as the last big news on Pakistan to reach the West before the flood.
Well, with friends like these, who needs enemies?
Amongst those U.S. military documents posted by WikiLeaks were allegations that Pakistani intelligence personnel, employees of the government, were collaborating with America's enemy in Afghanistan, the Taliban.
Usually, charity and politics don't mix very well. And the problem is the way that Pakistan is usually portrayed in the Western media is an intensely political story.
You have, of course, the Pakistan of terrorism, the Pakistan of Al-Qaeda, the Pakistan of a spectacularly corrupt government, all these narratives which float around and result in clearly a much more ambiguous take on what's happened there.
Pakistan is now being terrorized by nature.
And all of it can be blamed on one single factor.
Help Al-Qaeda gain a stronger foothold in the region.
It is because of media that you have got the problem of Islamophobia. There is total negative image of Muslims and Islam. But it is Pakistan which is blamed most of the time for everything that is radical, everything that is extremist.
No natural disaster is completely apolitical. But the problem for Pakistan is because the Western media is so used to reporting it in a particular way.
Pakistan is the real risk.
It can't divorce the two. It's impossible to do so.
When it comes to a place that is already having an impression amongst the media as well as certain sections of the media and the public, then it is very difficult to mobilize a quick and adequate response. But what often journalists miss the point is the difference between the ordinary people who go through the suffering versus the perceived politics of any place.
Survivors have new concerns now.
But in news, as in politics, perception is reality. And in Pakistan, the reality is the media's perception has colored their coverage of a tragedy in which the pictures don't even begin to tell the story. Our Global Village voices now on the floods in Pakistan and the media.
There is disaster fatigue among Americans. The earthquake in Haiti and the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico used people up emotionally and financially. The economy is terrible here, and people are worried about that as well. Some Americans also are reluctant to sympathize with Pakistanis because they're scared of Pakistan.
Primarily, the international media is to be blamed. For so long, it is projected a negative image of Pakistan, calling it a failed state, a state delivering terrorists, Al-Qaeda members, that there is little compassion left for Pakistan internationally.
When comparing it to the Haiti earthquake and the reporting that was done during that time, you can't help but notice that the Pakistan flood coverage hasn't been as extensive and in-depth.
Our Global Village Voice platform is how our viewers feed back into our program on the state of the world's news media. Most of those voices find out what stories we're working on by going to our Facebook and Twitter pages, then they weigh in with their opinions. The alternative way to get in touch with us is via old-fashioned email. We're at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. China is struggling with a flood story of its own, as well as some deadly mudslides, and many reporters there have been prevented from covering the story. The Chinese government issued a restriction that barred local journalists from traveling to the two provinces in the northwestern part of the country where the mudslides occurred. The pictures we're showing you are from Al Jazeera. International journalists are telling us that they too have been impeded from time to time, but the actual ban does not apply to them. Al Jazeera's Melissa Chan has also said that there's been a pretty wide discrepancy between the number of fatalities reported by rescue workers and the numbers being reported officially in Chinese state-run media. The official numbers are lower. Facebook, like much of new media, is proving to be a PR minefield for militaries around the world. Meet Eden Arabigil, a young woman who served with the Israeli forces recently. This is her Facebook page where she created a photo album called Army, The Best Time of My Life. The shots are pretty standard photos until you come to these. Miss Arabigil posing in front of Palestinian prisoners, shots apparently taken in 2008. After being discovered and reposted by a blogger, they quickly spread across the internet. The site also included all kinds of comments about the images. Many of them were even more disturbing than the shots themselves. The director of the Israeli human rights group Public Committee Against Torture said that, quote, the horrible pictures demonstrate a norm of treating Palestinians like objects instead of human beings, unquote. Miss Arabigil's photo album is long gone from her Facebook page. However, the images are still out there and will, like so many things, probably live on forever on the web. Hardly a week goes by when we don't have a WikiLeaks story that we could include on the listening post. The site and its co-founder and frontman, Julian Assange, are being praised and attacked from some surprising quarters. Turns out that former Cuban President Fidel Castro is a fan of WikiLeaks. The aging revolutionary praised the site to a group of Venezuelan journalists and said that a statue should be erected in Assange's honor. You could call that the Latin American version of the old Arab adage that goes, my enemy's enemy, es mi amigo. But the Paris-based media rights group Reporters Without Borders has written a critical open letter to Assange in light of the Afghan war logs leak and the site's failure to conceal the identities of some American sources in Afghanistan, thereby putting those people at risk. RSF said, quote, WikiLeaks is an information outlet and as such is subject to the same rules of publishing responsibility as any other media. The precedent that you have set leaves all those people throughout the world who risk their freedom and sometimes their lives for the sake of online information even more exposed to reprisals, unquote. It has often been reported that Swedish source protection law is one of the legal barriers that shields Julian Assange and his site from prosecution. Turns out that that is only true for organizations registered as publishers in Sweden and that WikiLeaks had failed to do that paperwork. Assange was in Sweden recently taking care of that problem, ensuring that he and his site are in fact protected. Julian Assange also used that visit to land his first mainstream media gig. He will be writing as a columnist for a tabloid daily in Sweden called Aftonbladet. That's the paper that got into trouble with the Israeli government last year over a report that alleged that Israeli soldiers had in the early 1990s stolen body parts from dead Palestinians. We're back after the break with a piece on a political coup that took place a long time ago in the Middle East, in which the media played a major part. We're reaching back into our archives this week for a look at an historic media event that took place in Iran 57 years ago this month and continues to have an effect on politics and the way news is reported in that country today. The coup that toppled President Mohammad Mossadegh happened in August of 1953. Declassified CIA documents confirm that the American intelligence agency and Britain's MI6 orchestrated the political unrest, and much of the Iranian media were on their payroll. The Listening Post's Salah Qadar now on the coup d'etat of 1953, what went on behind the scenes, more importantly, what was reported, and the repercussions that Iranians are living with more than half a century later.
The year was 1953. The Iranian press was manipulated by US and British intelligence to help topple the country's democratically elected government, led by Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh.
Nobody really knows how many reporters were on the payroll, although we did have an authoritative estimate that at least 70% of the newspapers in Tehran were directly or indirectly being bribed by the CIA.
I would say it's the landmark event in Iranian 20th century history. For most Iranians, the formative crisis that basically determines how Iranians look at history, contemporary history, international relations, is through the prism of 1953.
Prime Minister Mossadegh had just nationalized Iran's oil, wrenching it away from British control. The Americans needed convincing to join a coup effort, so the British played the Red Scare card. It was the early days of the Cold War, and that had an impact on the Americans, who feared Iran was ready for a communist takeover.
any direct military intervention by the United States would risk a counter intervention from the Soviet Union, and that could spiral out of control into a nuclear holocaust. So the United States was looking for another way to shape events in foreign countries.
The Americans came up with a new, more subtle model for regime change, aimed at swaying public opinion and reinstalling a puppet monarch, the Shah of Iran. It came to be known as the world's first media coup.
The strategy of the CIA and the British was to actually bribe both politicians and the media to bring down the Mossadegh's government.
Back in '53, things were a lot less sophisticated in terms of media than they are today. But one could work through radio, one could work through some of the existing traditional forms of communications. It was sort of classic CIA technique, including getting stories out through the press, planting stories in parts of the media you might control or influence.
Operation Ajax, as the coup was called, was run by Kermit Roosevelt, a CIA operative in the Middle East. Roosevelt wrote a detailed report on what he had done, a document that was declassified in 2000. He described the anti-Mossadegh newspaper articles as grey propaganda, referred to the political cartoons that demonized the Prime Minister, and he revealed that it wasn't just Iranian journalists who were behind the news articles.
Many of the articles that were published in the Iranian press were actually written in Washington by the CIA, translated and sent to Iran, and then the Iranian journalists just put it in their paper.
There was almost no slander you could imagine against Mossadegh that did not appear at some point in some of these newspapers. These newspapers would churn out articles day after day about Mossadegh being a spy, a homosexual, a Jew, weak, corrupt, anything that they thought would undermine his image.
It wasn't just the Americans using the media to manipulate Iranian politics. The British used BBC Radio to transmit a secret code to the Shah. Usually they would end their daily broadcast with the words, "It is now midnight." By changing that ever so slightly to, "It is now exactly midnight," the Shah got the message that the coup was on and Mossadegh's days were numbered. Fast forward to 1979. 26 years of autocratic rule had made the Shah and his US allies extremely unpopular. Supporters of Ayatollah Khomeini decided to turn to another media tactic, unconventional at the time, to build support for the Shah's overthrow.
When he was agitating against the Shah, Ayatollah Khomeini would record his words onto cassettes. Those cassettes would go hand to hand in the Tehran Bazaar. The cassette of Ayatollah Khomeini that disseminated his message is a precursor to the Facebook and MySpace and Twitter and SMS text messaging of today.
The Shah's rule lasted until the popular revolution that ended with the establishment of the Islamic Republic, and the impact of those audio cassettes has not been forgotten. Iranians now live with the repercussions of not just 1979, their government's restrictive media policies can be traced all the way back to 1953.
This is the reason why Iran does not allow open media, or one of the reasons. It's because they realize that the CIA will take advantage of a free press and wind up subverting it and bribing editors and newspaper reporters to weaken the regime.
I think the Iranian government may be operating under the historical recognition of how events have been manipulated in the past, so you may have some reasons to feel paranoid.
The Iranians have learnt from their history, but the world and technology have moved on since 1953. Iran today is a place where any citizen can practice journalism. Any mobile phone can get the story out. Controlling the media has never been harder.
More Global Village Voices now on the 1953 coup and the media's role in it.
The first thing I learned about Iran was fear the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, I don't know if the Western press are biased against Iran or manipulated by the Israel lobby, but reporting on the Islamic Republic is certainly incomplete.
The thing I've been most struck by in watching events unfold in Iran is how quickly the image of the Iranian people has changed and how it has been the people of Iran and not the Western media who've affected that change. The democratization of news sharing through sites like Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook has given the people of Iran, not their government or some large media conglomeration, their strongest tool in reshaping their image before the world.
Finally, ever notice that in the movies, no one ever has trouble finding a parking spot? No one ever has to take a bathroom break, and everyone seems to have a good cell phone signal all the time. It's that last example that got the people at collegehumor.com thinking, what would happen if in one of those fast-paced action movies, one of their crucial cell phone calls failed? Because they never do. We're leaving you with this, our web video of the week, and we'll see you next time at The Listening Post.
I'm here, you son of a
Now, watch the attitude. I wouldn't want anything to happen to your dear little girlfriend.
If you touch her, I swear.
She'll be fine as long as I get what I want. So listen carefully.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's fine.
Was that you or me?
It was you.
Ah, my bad. Anyway, if you ever want to see your girlfriend alive again, you're gonna...
What?
Hello? Hello?
I can hear you.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine.
I'm echoing. I can hear my own voice. Am I echoing to you?
No.
Can I call you back?
Just tell me what you want.
I'm gonna text it to you.
I can hear you. Yeah.
You got that?
Your blank text, yeah.
It was blank? You have a BlackBerry. Can we BBM for a second?
Jesus.
If you ever want to hold your girlfriend again, you'll BBM me for a second.
I have an iPhone.
So say that. I'll email you. What's your address?
My name at Gmail.
All one word?
Oh my God.
Okay, sent. You get that?
1 second.
This is why you need a BlackBerry, bro. I'm telling you, you get emails like instant. It's like super fast.
Got it.
Oh, and?
You're sick!
Hey, this is Dennis. Sorry I can't get to the phone right now. Leave a message and I'll call you back. Where's the pound button? There we go.
Warning message.
Hey, sorry, I got a text and then I meant to check it, but I guess I hung up. Anyway, this went straight to voicemail, so I'm assuming you're calling me. Weird how that happens. If it happens again, let's just decide that I'll be the one to call back.
Hello.
Why didn't you call me back? I left you a voicemail.
I know, I was listening to it. It was really long.
But it's gonna be a very long time before you ever see your girlfriend if you don't.
No, I get you the money.
No, call my landline. I can't hear you, like, at all.